Hey guys, welcome. In this video we'll be looking at how to keyframe and bake all the information that we've seen over here into keyframes. So right now we can see that there's still a lot of little things going on, such as a leg flipping. We have the ear that doesn't connect properly, a little piece at the top as well over here, and little things that in Z-depth kind of work a little bit randomly, such as the arm popping up here. If we wanted to decide at which particular frame we would fix that, this would all happen right here. So we'll start off right away by collapsing the character on the timeline. So if you have a top peg, make sure that you see just the character. And we are going to select all of the keyframes that we've worked on so far. So front, quarter front, and side. We don't have access to the quarterback and back views yet since we haven't created them. So we'll select those and then go and select Create Keyframes On, which is the tool most often used for animators to set keyframes on ones or on twos, but we'll use that to bake the keyframes inside of our timeline. So clicking on this with my selection, I'm going to set the number of frames that I want to use for creating keyframes. So over here in the settings, I have every number of frames. So basically create a keyframe every single frame. If I wanted it on twos, I would just write 2 in here. Keep existing keyframe, that's all good. And first frame and last frame, which is already a part of my selection. So let's go ahead and press OK on that. We'll get a keyframe created onto every single frame of my character. And if I open up the structure, I can see as well that this is on everything, be it deformation, pegs, and the likes. So now that we have this, the information of our character is all baked into values for each and every frame. Now, I can go and fix much more easily little things like the ears. If I just go and find those inside of my timeline, I have a deformation on the upper portion of the ear. And go and find those and look at basically what's happening. Over in the first few frames, nothing major is going on. It's working as intended, but then as we start going a little bit further into details, we see that it doesn't quite work. So we'll want to fix those over here. Already I can see on this part that I may want to make a quick fix on my main pose over here, which wasn't set very precisely. So really this step is a good opportunity to start getting a little bit more into details and making sure that everything flows nicely. So let's have a look at our frames. Right now we can already see that part of the pink starts showing on the outside. So I have 2 options. I can either nudge the pink inside of the ear using the top deformation point to make sure that it doesn't follow. And we'll have to do this onto every single frame. So we don't want it to come on the outside, but we also don't want to modify the aspect that we have over here. So let's just go ahead and adjust those very slightly onto every frame that we have to make sure that the transition flows nicely through all of those. So over on this one, I'm starting to see the brown of the eye. Sometimes the deformation can get a little bit in the way, so make sure to turn it off if ever you need to see the full shape. So right now these ones are working pretty nicely. Let's see if the transition that we had over here is nice. For this one, we have to kind of figure out when the ear pops to the front. Does it look weird at the moment? I think it doesn't bother me too much for now. We could have perhaps a little bit more showing over here just to kind of see what is going to happen. And we could nudge that line a little bit further down. And here we have it. We can see that the line kind of moves up a little bit as well. So as the line starts appearing over here and over on this side, it is a little bit far up, so I may want to take the deformation of the line, so the line with the mask that we created, and perhaps nudge it up a little bit. So we'll have to readjust, as you can see, the line of the ear, so the pink of the ear over on this side, if we do that. Every now and then, as you of course move one frame, it is only moving the one. So you may have to go to this frame here, and to facilitate things, instead of manually going to put those points in the right place, you may want to just get rid of these other keyframes over here and kind of just redo the motion keyframes for those to see if it's going to transition smoothly. And then you can just redo the same step, select, bake the keys in place to make sure that this flows nicely over on this side. We can do the same thing over on the other side as well. So right now I think having an additional frame over here and bringing this part to the top might not be a bad idea. So it's all about playing with those informations a little bit and making sure that we don't have any parts that overlap and that don't look too nice. So I go and do something like this. The pink of the ear pops forward in the next frame. I'm going to go and reposition that slightly. Be careful, because it's also affecting the curve over here, so you don't want it to be too extreme. And we're going to do the same thing for these points that we created over here. We're going to find the deformation. If you want, you could collapse the entire thing over here. And inside this deformation, we're going to take the keyframe that we modified, remove those extra ones, turn on the interpolation just to make sure that it follows up nicely into the rest of the ear. And looking at it now, I'm seeing that this becomes a little bit too extreme, so I can readjust that very slightly. And we'll have to do the same thing over with this deformation. So before baking the keyframes, you can make sure that you have everything in place. And to me, that already looks nicer than it did before. So let's go ahead and select those keyframes, bake them, and now those values are set in place. So sometimes, even though it looks like the smallest thing, you want to really spend a little bit more time to make sure that it's going to work. The top part of the ear as well is flipping over to the other side. One thing we could have done is just create a new drawing with the flipped version of this piece. Right now it is just moving from one side to the other, scaling down in the X axis. So let's go and find that peg here. So the peg is the one flipping. As we can see over here, it's already greatly decreased in value. So what we're going to do instead is just remove those keyframes that we had on the ear, and I'm going to set down one over on this side of the timeline to do the transition between pose 20 and pose 25. So I may want to just do something like this. And over on the other side of that keyframe, I'm going to flip that. So do a -1 and rearrange it so that it comes as close as possible to being the pose that we have at the end, and that can just smoothly follow into this one. So one more thing we can do with the ear over on this side is, as you can see, some pieces are kind of popping up, and we want to try to make that transition as smooth as possible. So what we can do is perhaps go into the first position where we can actually see the ear on top, or if you want to see it a little bit earlier, you can bring that to the top, making sure that the ordering of the layers stays the same. You can actually go and edit this little piece once it comes back to the top. Try to make the transition kind of seamless to where it came from. So right now it would be just popping up on top a little bit over here, and same thing as before, we can take this first part, remove the interpolation, and add it again before baking it. So that way it kind of flows a little bit more nicely instead of popping up directly as a big chunk that just appears on top of everything else. So again, baking those keys, and you would go the same for every little transition that you have in there. For instance, the pink of the ear, go to that first pose where it kind of pops up, even if it's at the back right now, so long as it stays there. Let's try to remove these baked frames, add the transition, see how that's looking. It's actually much nicer than it was before, so let's go and bake that. And now we can look at this. You can see there's a bit of pink still coming out in certain places, so for those we can just go and adjust them manually to make sure that none of it pops out. And that seems about right. I don't think we see any more over here, so there we have it. There we have it. Again, we're going to bake those positions into place, reducing the amount of information that is left to automatic interpolation. So in the next video, we'll be looking a little more at the leg and at the portion of the hips over here that we want to fix up. And after that, we'll be able to move on into the next few poses that we have to create. See you guys there.